And I will actually remember to present my screen this time. Huzzah. Okay, very good. So what I've done is I've just gone to the classroom and gone to the midterm exam. There are the two starter files, one of which is a PDF of just instructions, and then midterm.zip is what the starter file you want to be working with. So the exam instructions, the PDF I've just opened up in, I guess the default for this is Firefox for some reason. And then I've created a Unit 6 folder for myself containing the instructions, and there's the midterm.zip. I'm going to go ahead and unzip that. And I'll probably go ahead, let's see. Yeah, this is what we were talking about before, like this Mac OS X thing. Usually I remember to get rid of that before sharing stuff with you, but didn't this time. So I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of that. And then I'll probably go ahead and rename my root directory here. And I think I asked for last name dash midterm, I think. I suppose I should look at the instructions here, or did I maybe not give specific instructions on that? I guess I didn't. So anything like that is fine. You know, you guys know me. I like for your submission files to start with your last name. It just helps me with organization. But since I didn't specifically ask for that, I wouldn't take any points off for it. I wouldn't do that to you guys. So here is our starter file. I'm going to open this up in Chrome. And there it is. And right off the bat, I'm just going to go ahead and open up the console just so it's just there, right? Because I know I'm going to be using it. And then I will take this HTML file and I will open it up in coding environment here. And then I'll just check the instructions. I'm going to go through these ones at a time. So the first part of this is the JavaScript. Create a JavaScript file, source it into the HTML document, and then complete the remainder of the scripts within this JavaScript file that you've created. Using comments for organization, I bolted this out, and every single one of you did a good job of paying attention to that suggestion. Everybody had organizational, structural comments, which I really appreciated. This helps me out so much. I think it's a good habit to get into because at some point you're going to be working on a team, right? And if you hand off your code, whatever kind of code it is, you know, MySQL, C++, whatever, hand it off to a teammate without any comments, and it's just going to be rough for them to get a handle on it. The same thing will happen when they hand off code to you. You'll learn pretty quickly that it's nice to have things commented. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and create my JavaScript file. And I suppose I could go ahead and open up the folder here. Although, yeah, I won't bother with that. I'm just going to make a new document. And let's see, I don't think that I said, yeah, I didn't give any instructions about what to call this. So you could call it index.js like we've been doing. You could call it sample.js. You could call it midterm.js. Maybe I'll go ahead and do that. Midterm.js, since I left it up to you guys. And I will save this. And I was hoping that you guys would create a subfolder within your root directory here called JS or JavaScript or scripts or something like that. And again, I think that every single one of you did that. So I'm very pleased about that. So the remainder of these, so you can go ahead and do the commenting in here. So what we were just talking about initially, it's like, yeah, the first comments that you put in can be like these, you know, blocks. And if you got that far, like just commenting in just these sections here, then that's perfectly fine. Like that would be enough for those points right there. So the first one would be like the JavaScript. And then the next one is the constants. I'll try to type a little slower here. And then the loop. and then the condition, and if you're feeling confident, you go ahead and put that one in as well. Now there's something else that I need to do. I need to actually source this in. That's the one piece that I haven't done. So in one case at least, someone sourced it in at the top here inside the head element, and that led to some problems because, as we talked about in week 1, when you're writing your own scripts that are meant to access portions of the web page, you really want to have those at the bottom of the document so that the whole page can load first. And if you put it up here and you say, okay, document.querySelector like H1, then you might get a reference error because H1 hasn't loaded in the page yet, so the script is looking for something that it thinks doesn't exist. So generally speaking, you only do the scripts up here, usually when you're calling in a library, which they want those functions to load before your page loads, or something like this, just to get it out of the way. And this is not, like I already know this is not referencing anything in the DOM. It doesn't really matter when it loads, so it's fine. Just go ahead and put it up top. So your script element should go down here at the bottom of the body element, but inside the body element. Otherwise, it won't validate, as you guys know. And, oh, I just opened that up by habit, but it's actually going to be source. It's going to be source equals JS slash, and I called it midterm.js. There we go. And it's not a bad idea just to start out by just giving this a quick test. Let x equal whatever. And then just go to the browser, refresh, and just type in your identifier name here and see if you come up with anything. And there it is. So good to go. The JavaScript is working. I can then go ahead and undo or get rid of that or comment it out or something like that. Okay, there we go. So just done the first part. I just picked up 5 easy points there. Next up, the constants. This is kind of the big section. So it's declaring 4 constants, which you use the const keyword instead of the let or var keyword, which are both ways of creating variables. Assign it to the H1 element of the HTML page. You can reference walkingthedom.pdf. I don't have that open in front of me, but you guys all have that from last week for how to retrieve the HTML element. So I put this comment on in everybody's here, I think. If I'm not mistaken, I don't think a single person in the class followed the convention, the naming convention for constants in JavaScript, which is to use all caps. And that's understandable. I mean, we only did a couple of constants, I think, in one of the Friday labs, and that was it. And the rest of the time I've been hammering on you guys about using camel case. And that is true. You use camel case for all your identifiers except for constants. So that's what I'm going to be doing in here. Since nobody got it right, I did not take any points off for it. I was planning on assigning points to that, but I did not because I figure if most or all of the class misses it, then I probably have not emphasized it well enough. So let me go ahead and do this here. I'm going to do const, and then I'm going to use capital H1 just because of the naming conventions, right, for a constant. Equals, and the way that you get one item off the page, and I don't know, maybe before even coding this in, you go to the browser and just test it out and see if you can grab the H1, right? So leave that empty for right now so it doesn't throw an error at me. So I just say, yeah, document.querySelector and H1. And oops, got to spell it correctly. And then just see if you can get the H1 from the page, and it'll spit it out here. Like, you don't have to assign it to a variable or constant or anything. You don't have to say console.log. You just come to the console and just type in the identifier or the object and property or method in this case, and then hit return and see if you can get a result back, in which case we can here. Now, I told you when we were reviewing for the test, I'm saying I'm going to be doing something like what we did for that Friday lab when I gave you the PDF, but it's going to be a little bit different. And in this case, it was. I asked you to get a single element instead of a node list. So if you're getting a node list, it would be document.querySelector all H1 or whatever. And that's what you did for your Friday lab. But this one's a little bit different. This is just to get one element in there. So that h1 equal document dot query selector. And of course, once you get it to work in the console, you can just copy and paste your code into your script here and see how it works. And then once again, as soon as you type this in, go back over here, refresh, and see if you can get something just by typing h1. Yep, there it is. Cool. So that is it. Let me check the instructions again. Assign the h1 element of the HTML page, and okay, that's it for number 1. Number 2, declare a constant, assign it the inner text of the h1. So a couple of people did the document.query selector thing again, but you don't need to because now you've got the value in a constant here. So you can just do const h1 text or something like that. Notice the all caps equals h1 dot inner text, like so. And once again, you can pop over to the browser and refresh and try it out. Just type in h1 text. There it is. Cool and groovy. Create a substring of all the characters before the comma, logging into the console. So I didn't tell you like how to do this. I know that in the lab, what was it, Unit 3 lab last week, whenever it was. I guess it was the Friday lab, whatever. I was very specific, like I want you to go to the console and then use index of in order to find like where the substring is supposed to end and then create a substring of it in your own script. But this one, you could do that, or you could just sit there and just like count the characters, because this one wasn't very far in, right? The other one was like 41 characters in. This one was only like, what, 14 or 16, something like that. Whatever you wanted to do. So let's say I'm going to do it like the prior method. So I told you to grab everything before the comma. Let's see here. I think I spat this out. Yeah, everything before the comma. So you could do like h1 text dot index of, and then look for that comma like so, and it'll give you the value of 14. But if you didn't remember this, like I said, you could just sit here and just go 1, 2, 3, 4, just like count it in and see how many. That was fine. So now, but the part I did want was you to do the console.log, and I can't remember, did I ask for this to be logged to the console? Yes, logging into the console. So I'll put it all inside of console.log, and this is going to be h1 text.substring. And then in a substring, for the 2 arguments, you put in the starting and ending characters. The first one is the 0 at the beginning, and the next one we just found it is 14. Save and go over here and refresh, and there it is. This is the substring that I was looking for, IS450 and IS450L. Okay, so that's number 2 here. Number 3, declare a constant, assign it a new date object. So once again, I did 4 constants in here. So const, and then I don't know, you could say now or date or whatever you wanted to, equals new date. And I don't think, yeah, I didn't even ask for this to be logged to the console for once. Most of the stuff I asked to be logged to the console, but not this one. But when I refresh over here, then you can just type in your constant name and see if it spits this out for you, and it does. Declare a constant, assign it the footer element of the HTML page, and again, you can reference the dom.pdf document. Same exact technique as we used to get the h1. So I will go ahead and do const footer equal document.query selector footer, like so. Go to the browser, refresh, make sure I can get the value. I can. And then set the inner HTML of the footer to page created on concatenated with your date constant that you created in number 3 here. So I think this is kind of a way forward for like learning the DOM operations. I know you guys did some of this stuff even in the HTML class, even if it was only in week 5, but whenever I ask for stuff that we haven't specifically gone over, I haven't given you a document to look over, then you're always free to browse the web for solutions. I think that most coding jobs are like that, if not all coding jobs. And even some job interviews that I've seen where they allow you to look up stuff if they give you a technical interview, then, I mean, If they're smart, they do. If they're not smart, then they expect you to have all this stuff memorized. And I don't know. I shouldn't be too judgmental. I think that's kind of silly, personally. If I were hiring a coder right now, I would not be interested in how much stuff they had memorized. I personally would be interested in how they could problem solve with all the tools at their disposal, including looking stuff up. Now, obviously, I can't just give carte blanche to that during a test, an exam in class like this. But again, if it's something that we haven't actually gone over like this, then yeah, absolutely. Browse the web for solutions. In this case, I even recommended going to MDN, the Mozilla Developer Network, and looking up inner HTML. It's actually one of the first things you learn how to do when you're doing DOM stuff. So it's going to be footer, and inner HTML is a property of HTML element. So inner HTML equals, and let's see, did I say how to do it? Oh yeah, just concatenation. There must be some other place. Oh yeah, I asked for a template literal down here, but this one is concatenation, so use the plus. So equals page, I want to make sure I can get it right. I'm taking a test here. Page created on. And if you're really paying attention, you give it a little space there so that on doesn't crash into your date object string. Plus, and then now, like so. And now, for the first time, if we go over here to the browser and refresh, we'll see a change. In fact, for the only time, we'll see a change on the page here. And there it is, page created on. Now, obviously, in most web pages, you would not want to have the full date object. So this is something that I did not ask for in the test, but let me just show you what you can do in order to have something. I don't know, let's say you just wanted the year. So I could do like now.getFullYear, for instance. And it is a method, so it gets the parentheses. And then when I go back over here and refresh, and now the sentence doesn't make sense anymore. But anyway, once you get a new date object, there is stuff that you can do to it to format it in various ways. And we haven't gone over that stuff. I don't think we're going to have time to, but just so you're aware, it doesn't always have to be that huge string. I'll go ahead and get rid of that again because that was not part of the test. And there we go. Okay. So that is the 7 points of the constants. Next up is the loop. Reference the numstrings array contained within the head script. So that is this array here that I gave you guys. I figured since this arrays are not really part of the midterm exam, but will be part of the final exam, then I can just go ahead and give you an array that you can use instead of asking you to code one yourself. Use a for-of statement to loop through the array, and then it gives a couple things to do within the loop. So I'll make the loop first. I'll do the structure first. Over here, this is in the loop. And what did I call it? Numstrings? Yeah. So for let of numstrings. All too often, I just tend to do I here, but it really is probably poor coding practice because I stands for index usually, and this gives the false impression that you're going to be looping through the index numbers of the array, and that's not the case. So this probably makes more logical sense. Let numstring of numstrings, and then let's see what I asked myself to do here. Add an opening li tag before each element and a closing li tag after. Use a template literal for this. So I could do, and then log each entry to the console. This could be done in one statement if you wanted it to. I'm not sure if anyone did this or not, but if you do like console.log and then put your concatenation, or not your concatenation, but your template literal in there. But since I asked for it in 2 chunks, I'll go ahead and do it in 2 chunks. I'll just say let's, I don't know, new string equal, and then the template literal stuff are these backticks like this, and then the opening and closing li tags are just like this, right? And then the interpolation, the way that you interpolate a value in the middle of this string is by using the dollar and then the curly braces like so, and then whatever you put on the inside of here will be evaluated as JavaScript. So then I can just say numstring here. that will take care of the first part, and then the second part is console.log new string, which is the new string that contains the interpolated value and so on. So let's go ahead and check that out here. I'm going to refresh. It should give me 5 LIs containing 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And there they are. Now, I didn't have you do anything else with these. At first, in an earlier iteration of the exam, I had you, like, writing these to the page, appending them to a UL, and so on. And we'll learn how to do that stuff. But for now, all I wanted to see is if you could just do some very simple templating like this. And then we're on to the condition, the last portion other than the extra credit. So create a variable named response. Okay, I know how to do that. The condition, let a response. Assign it a prompt that instructs the user to say something. Equals prompt is one of those functions that's built to the window object or the root element, the global scope. And could be something simple like say something. Like this. Now, as soon as I save this and go to the browser, I get the prompt. Like, even though I haven't told it to do anything or anything like that, and if I type something into it, nothing's going to happen. So just having that prompt in there, like having an alert, is enough to make it jump up at the user, unless you put it inside of a function, which is a way of containing the scope, of namespacing it, if you will, and putting it into a closure. Well, I guess it doesn't quite count as a closure, but in any case, it puts it into a function block, and it will not run this line immediately until you call the function, until you invoke the function. Hopefully you guys picked up a little of that when reading about functions for today. Let me see. I'm just going to check back with the classroom real quick here. Hang on just a moment. I want to see who else here. Okay, cool. Okay, so where am I at? I've just created, declared a variable called response and assigned it the prompt, say something. Write an if-else conditional statement. If the user types something into the prompt field, log that to the console. So take whatever they typed into that prompt, log it to the console. If they don't type anything, then just log the string don't reply to the console. So let's do the structure of it first. If, and then there's the condition, and then there's the if block, and then I'll do an else, and then the else block down here. And there's a couple of things that you could put in here. In fact, a few of you found some pretty interesting and creative solutions to this one. I think that in some cases your responses maybe worked, but they could be simplified a little bit. To some extent, it's kind of like, well, hey, it worked. Okay, cool. And if it worked, then I certainly didn't take off any points for it. But I don't know, it's something to pay attention to. Very often we figure out creative ways to do something, and then it turns out that there's a simple way to do it. So I'm just going to throw that out there. But there's a couple of things you can put in here that I think would both make an equal amount of sense and would be equally concise and easy to write and to read. One of which is simply to say if response, like this. And that is the easiest way to find out if this response value actually contains a value. Or sorry, if this identifier contains a value, if that variable contains a value. You could also, if you wanted, put in the not operator here. And I was considering that because that's actually the way we did it in last Friday's lab. I can't remember exactly what we were doing, but we were doing something with prompts and responses and so on. And I think we used the exclamation here. So if not response, then log no reply here, or else log the response. But the way that it's asked here, the way that the question is written, if the user types something into the prompt field, log that at the console. If not, log the string no reply. So I would take that to read. If these were my instructions, like someone giving these instructions to me, I would think, okay, well that means this stuff here goes into the if portion of the conditional, and then if not is this another way of saying else, so I would put that into the else portion or the else block. But either way is fine. So I will do if response, and then console.log response. So if there is something that the user said, then put that to the console, and if not, then console.log no reply. You guys know that Beatles song, No Reply? It's one of my favorite Beatles songs. I'm not going to sing it for you, don't worry. So go over here and refresh, and first of all, I'll test it by typing in enter, or hitting enter on the keyboard, so I don't type anything, and it says no reply. That's what we're looking for. Now I refresh and try it again, and this time I type in, I don't know, hello, and then there it is. That's what we're looking for. So if the user types in something, there it goes on the console. If they don't type anything, then we get no reply. Boom, done. So that's this portion here, which was 2 points, and then now comment out the above conditional and rewrite it as a ternary operator statement. Okay, cool. So console out the above. Now that doesn't mean comment out. I said console out, didn't I? Comment out. It doesn't mean you get to comment out this part. You still need this initial variable in order to do something with it. But I'm going to comment out that conditional statement. And let me type it in a way that I wouldn't type it, but which a few of you did. And again, I didn't mark it wrong because it worked. But no, let me just go ahead and jump to the way that I would do it. Well, this is what I saw in some people. So response, like you jumped right into the conditional itself, like this. So if response, then console.log response, or console.log, what was it? No reply, right? Like so. And this one here, like it works, right? No problem. But there's just, like, I wouldn't do it this way because this repeats itself, right? Console.log and then console.log, which I know it kind of does up here, and this is actually one of the weaknesses of doing it this way. Sometimes you have to. Sometimes you've got too much stuff to fit into a simple ternary statement like this. But if you don't have to repeat yourself, then why repeat yourself, right? There's a coding principle called dry, don't repeat yourself, which you guys have probably come across before. So when possible, refactor by taking something that repeats itself within a logical statement and try to get it outside of the statement so that you only have to say it once. So that's what's happening here. So console.log, and then I can put the ternary operator right here inside the log statement as the one parameter. So now I will do a response. Does response exist? Then console.log response, but then you only have to type in response. You don't have to do the console.log again because it's contained within a console.log statement. And then colon, and then just no reply. And once again, I do not have to type that console.log again. So I mean, it's not that much shorter, but it's a lot sweeter, I think. So I'm going to get rid of this guy. And I go over here and refresh just to make sure it's still working. No reply. There we go. So everything's still happening. And I think that was it for the regular portion of the exam. Any questions about any of this stuff that I just went over? Anything unclear, or you have a question about like how you did it versus how I did it? Or hey, mine worked, how come you took points off? Okay, cool. If you think of anything later on, of course, that's fine too. Let's take a look at the extra credits. So I got 2 sections in here, one of which is color space. Interesting font that it's choosing here. Create a variable named color space. Okay, I can do that. The color space. Assign it an object containing the properties red, green, and blue, whose respective values are cyan, magenta, and yellow. So the property or the value for red is cyan, the property for green, or the value for green is magenta, and so on and so forth. These are RGB and CMY color spaces for artists in the group. So I'll go ahead and just do let color space equal and then use an object literal here. And then I'll go ahead and put each of these in. So red and cyan. Remember that the property names here are actually strings, but as long as it's one word with no spaces or punctuation, you don't actually need to put it into quotes. Just be aware of that. It's still a string. And if I were to put quotes around this, it would act exactly the same way. So red, cyan, green. Complement of that is magenta, magental, and blue, the complement of which is yellow. So once again, I'll go over here and refresh. Now the trouble here is that it keeps throwing the prompt at you, but at least now all you have to do is hit enter and it'll go away again. Just going to test out color space. And there it is, red, cyan, green, magenta, blue, yellow, looking good. Log the name and value of each color space entry to the console. So name and value is what I was looking for here. And the way that you do that is with a for in loop. So we did the for in loop as one of our loop statements last Friday, but we didn't spend a whole lot of time with it, which is why I put it in as extra credit. Plus, it wasn't actually part of the lab, and I had to redo a few things in the test because I realized, no, I told the class that the only stuff that was going to be on there is like literally the stuff that you did in your two Friday labs. So actually, this test looked a lot different like a day before we took it, and I had to change a lot, but that's cool. So this wound up being extra credit. So the for in loop, so for, and this time it does make sense to use I for, or let I in color space, because I is going to be the index. In this case, it's more property names than actual indexes, but still, people will know what you're talking about. And let me make sure I'm following the instructions here. Yeah, just log the name and value of each color space entry into the console. So console.log I is the index, which in this case is the property name. So if we leave it at this, then it'll just give us those property names of red, green, and blue, but we want the values as well. So I'll put a comma here, and then color space. Now I'm tempted to do .i, but that's actually not going to work because I is an identifier, right? It's a variable of which we didn't have the value before we started looping through, so it's not going to work. But I can do the square bracket syntax. And I don't think I will even need to put quotes around that. Let's check it out here and see if I'm right. Refresh. There it is. Red, cyan, green, magenta, blue to yellow. If you were feeling really cool about it, then you might think about, oh yeah, I'm going to put a colon in here as well, in between those two, just like we did in the Friday demonstration. And there we go. But yeah, if you got this far, then you picked up all the points for the extra credit there for color space. Okay, so unstated extra credit. This actually was not the JavaScript. I had two things that I was looking for stuff that I thought that by now you guys should just know to do, and I shouldn't have to ask for it, so I kind of sneakily put that stuff in there. The first one, and I'm going to close my HTML page here. Well, let's go ahead and I'll do them in the reverse order. The first one is that I deliberately put an error into the HTML page. And so some of you noticed just from looking in here and getting their script element, like, wait, there's no main closing tag here. What's going on? And even if you didn't notice it in particular, you might think, oh, wait, I'm submitting an HTML page. I know that I'm not the one who wrote the HTML page, but that doesn't mean that in the real world you're not going to be considered responsible for it. Trust me on this. Just because you didn't create a document doesn't mean you're not responsible of it before you hand it off to someone else. So I'm going to go to validator.w3.org/nu. And I will go to File, Upload, and pick my file. Oh, all the way in Unit 1. That's the last time we did this. And where am I? Unit 6? Yeah. And I'll go ahead and just check this out here. And, oh my goodness, there's errors in this document. In tag for body scene, but they were unclosed elements, and it tells me which one was unclosed. Unclosed element main. So I think 2 or 3 of you figured this out, which I was pleased about. Because I didn't know if anybody was going to catch it. Because that really was a curveball that I threw to you guys. But that was a piece of unstated extra credit, which again, 2 or 3 people nailed it. Pleased to see that. The other piece of unstated credit, extra credit, was the name of this document. I gave you a starter.html. If I received an HTML file or any file that said starter or just like start here or beginning or init, like init for initial, that kind of thing, I would think, okay, I'm probably supposed to rename this thing. And I think I've counted that into you a little bit, that it should always be called index.html. So this is one I'm going to close so that I can rename it here in the folder. And I'm just going to give this a name of index.html before I submit it. And now I've picked up like 4 points of extra credit here by doing color space and then checking for validation and then renaming to index.html, and I'm all good to go. So, any questions about any of this stuff, including the extra credit or the unstated extra credit? Anything? Okay, I'm going to stop the recording.